Hello, and welcome to the High Conflict Co-Parenting Podcast. In this podcast, we explore and dive into the stress-filled world of high conflict divorce and relationships. We offer solutions to calm your world down and allow for greater positive engagement with your children and the people around you. If you find value in this commercial and advertising-free podcast, please consider donating by pressing the donate button so we can continue our helpful work. Thank you.
Welcome back, everybody, to the High Conflict Co-Parenting Podcast with Brooke Olson. And this week we've got special guest Michelle Mitchell. And today's topic is using a ghostwriter for communication with your co-parent. Welcome, Michelle.
Well, thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah. Michelle and I have some history. Michelle came to me years ago when she was in the middle of some of her co-parenting crisis, and we've got an arc of relationship that has spanned probably the better part of 7 years at this point. So I think where I want to start with this, Michelle, is some of the things that you do have come out of some of the things that we've talked about over the years and that you've learned and taken some more creative approaches to. And one of those approaches has been ghostwriting. And I'd like you to just kind of set the stage for what that ghostwriting looks like. And then we're going to kind of come back and look at how you arrived at that and some of the things that you feel are really beneficial in this offering that you have.
Sure. So, as you know, the better part of my coaching practice is working with high conflict co-parents, just like you do. And so what I do is I go in and help them with communications, which can look like a lot of different things. But the main thing that we do is they'll hire me and I go into our family wizard if they're set up through that, review their communications between them and their co-parent, communicate to them. Usually my clients want me to summarize what the other parent said, just so that I can take out any of the highly inflammatory language. And then they give me information that needs to be communicated. I type it up in a response that disengages from the conflict, doesn't seek a response back, and kind of take it off of their shoulders for them. Some clients go in and send the message themselves. Some of them want to just turn it all over to me and have me log in, using their credentials and send it for them. So there's a lot of different ways that I work with clients, but typically my clients are in our family wizard just because if it's high conflict, one of them has usually requested to be in there. And then if they're not in family wizard, I usually recommend that they set up a separate email account for a number of reasons.
Okay. So this kind of, I'm guessing, arose out of some conversations that we had going along in terms of finding somebody that or that you can hire that can do exactly what you're doing in order to help people downregulate. So they don't have to get into the fight. They can have somebody else run interference for them. They can work with the languaging that needs to be worked with, so there isn't that inflammatory flare. So when you're in front of a judge or whoever is going to be looking at this stuff, that you don't appear to be a part of the problem. You know personally what that looks like. You know how that happens in real time. Would you like to talk a little bit about your own experience in that?
Sure. I mean, I look back at my early days of, our family wizard, and I just want to cringe. First of all, it's like, oh my gosh. But I always felt like, gosh, I sure wish I had someone who's not involved who could just read the messages and respond for me. And to some extent, I used one of my best friends. She helped me out with it, but she's one of my best friends, so she would often get triggered as well. And I know you and I talked a lot about disengaging and how to communicate in a way that I wasn't engaging. And so that was just something that kind of always stuck in my mind, is it would be great to have someone else who's not personally involved in this, because as a coach, I don't get triggered by anything that a co-parent says to another parent. If it was my own personal co-parent, 100% would get triggered. So it just sort of takes that away. But I came to you, gosh, I think it was about 7 years ago, after I was in a restraining order hearing. I had filed a restraining order and had what I thought was a very airtight case. And it turned out that I hadn't accounted for the fact that my co-parent would show up in court and lie, make some pretty outrageous lies, which triggered me and caused me to respond in a way that made me look as though I was just as crazy, because I was feeling crazy at the time because I couldn't believe what was happening. And so the narrative looked very different than it would have if I had worked with you prior to going to court. And so it's the same communication, whether it's an email or court, that someone like me or yourself can really hone in the messaging and help our clients to not become activated before communicating.
It leads to a defensiveness. It leads to languaging in either written form or verbal form if you're in a courtroom that can be devastating to your case. And I think what I want to help people understand in this, and you haven't mentioned, is you're an attorney.
I am.
You're a licensed attorney in this state, and you had no idea of what you were going into in family court. You had some sense of justice in this arena, or that this was going to be obvious and somebody could be heard, and that lying was not acceptable, and it was naive as hell. And it came up and it smacked you.
Not only am I an attorney, Brooke, but I'm in litigation for almost 20 years. And so I thought, I had done everything I could to prove my case. I mean, I had all of the facts. There's no question about that. I even had, video evidence. But you're right. I don't practice family law. And so I completely underestimated really a narcissist lying in court. And so it threw me off. It threw me off. And until we chatted about it, I kind of looked at it as, I got screwed. How did this happen? How could this happen? And part of it was the new judge that I had, but also another part of it was that my reaction to the lie was just complete, utter shock. And that came through in a way that appeared to be as aggressive as the person who was on the stand lying.
And I think part of the important part of what you just said is you were a litigating attorney and you had a new judge. And so many of the judges that come into family law come out of criminal law or civil law, and they're litigators, and they don't have this perspective of the personalities and the personality types and disorders that come floating through their world. And the stakes are very different, because we're moving from what is just law, this is law, into something that is perspective, about somebody trying to see the he said, she said, that has no grounds in any form, that has to be addressed. And this is where this whole languaging thing becomes so important in terms of how you get seen and heard. And it has to be to somebody that is totally unfamiliar with the things that we're talking about here.
Absolutely. And, you just hit the nail on the head, because, and I know you and I have talked about this a bunch, that new judges often, first of all, family law attorneys, they have a pretty good gig. So most of them don't want to become a judge. It's exactly, it's the litigators, the civil, the criminal litigators, they want to become a judge. So family law kind of becomes the training ground. They don't want to be there. They don't know family law, and they certainly don't know high conflict. And so they come to the case with the mentality of, can't you all just get along? And as you know, in a high conflict situation, no, they can't just get along and have them over for, Christmas dinner or whatever.
Yeah. So you're going through all of this stuff. You're learning in real time. You are a soldier in this fight, personally. And you came into this notion that you have something to offer here in terms of doing this ghostwriting. So talk a little bit about the different things that you do and how you approach it, if you would.
Do you mean in terms of actually writing the communications?
Well, your engagement with your clients, first of all. So what are the initial conditions that you want to set up with them? And you talked about that a little bit, but I'd like you to go a little bit more into detail and how you set the stage for your ongoing work with them. So you do this piece of ghostwriting for emails or for our Family Wizard or Talking Parents or whatever format that they're in. But you also, I understand, help people take their concepts of what they want to do. A lot of people, here's some facts, as going through family court, about 70 or 80% of the people that go through family court go through pro se. They don't have attorneys for them. For various reasons. One, they think it's an easier piece. So they go through and they say, I can do this, or they don't have the resources to hire. So some of the things they can do is they can come in, they can, hire a coach to try to help them work through what they want to put forward, and then come through and write the declaration. Now, I think that there's a couple more things here that you do, but I want to address that as well as either that or a possibility in this arena, as well as we want to be efficient when we go to attorneys. Attorneys cost a boatload of money. And the more that we can deliver to them in the initial conditions in a form that is usable, becomes financially less restrictive going forward. And if we're going to do this pro per or pro se, if you will, then we have to have somebody that can format this stuff for us.
Yes.
And my clients, when they come to me for coaching, that's part of what I do is like, let's distill this. Let's get the garbage out of this. And let's talk about what you want, why you want it, and how you're going to deliver it. But what I don't do is I don't write the declarations. I don't have that in my forte. And this is something that you do, correct?
Yes. Yeah. So same kind of thing, same concept is look at what's the end game. We talk about where do you want to end up with this thing? What do you want? What are your goals? What do you think they want so that you can address that in your, your declaration or your communications? What do you think the sticking points are going to be? And this is both for pro se or someone who's working with an attorney, because often someone who's working with an attorney, like you said, they will want to utilize coaching more because my rates are cheaper than their family law attorney. Right. And just sort of, hand their attorney like, hey, here's what I want here. It's in a pretty little package, focusing on things that not only they want, but that sound reasonable, because they also don't want to reach too far. And then the court sort of like, whoa, what's really going on here? It kind of looks like you're trying to, take time away from the other parent or alienate the other parent. So we would need to pull all of that in, not just what they want, because they can want the world, but they're not going to get the world. And so it has to be phrased in a way that's reasonable, isn't overreaching, and ultimately, as you know, has the children's best interest. So you might want, Christmas break or holiday break every year because you can't imagine not being with your children, but that's not what's best for the children. So looking at all aspects involved and how it's going to land with a judge. And then the more detail that can be in there, the more likely it is that the court's going to adopt it, because like we talked about before, courts don't know enough about it. They don't have very much time per case. So they just want to rubber stamp something. So either they're going to rubber stamp what they give to every case, or they're going to rubber stamp some version of what you give them. Mm-hmm. So it's really important to do the work ahead of time, whether it's in communications or your declarations, and sort of tee it up for them. When I work with clients who just want to do the ghostwriting of emails, I recommend having a session, beforehand, so we can get on the same page and help them learn how to communicate, so that, eventually they can learn through the way that I'm communicating after reviewing my emails, and do it themselves, so that no one's on, like a 18-year plan with their co-parent. So really coaching them through showing them how to write rather than telling them how to do it. A couple of clients, I've actually had them write the email, and then I go through and revise it for them so they can see the changes that are being made. But typically what it is they'll provide me with the factual information, and I go through and distill it into, a pretty little package, taking out all of the emotion.
Okay. So I'm curious because, given our span of relationship in this stuff, my look at ghostwriting, my look at having somebody else do this work for them, I, like you, want my clients to grow. I want them to come in and settle. I want them to be able to disengage to a point of having a set of neutrality in their system, where many of the people that are in this, either in the early stages or coming out of abusive relationships, and they don't know how to hold a boundary or state something without getting activated and reactive and defensive and looking like they're part of the problem, or they've been in this process for a number of years, and they've been bombarded with the gaslighting and all that goes along with that, and they're in some form of PTSD from it, and their nervous systems aren't geared to actually unwind from this. And what you offer in this becomes kind of a longer term relationship with them. So here's a question that I have. When you're trying to get your clients to understand the languaging, oftentimes they're still looking at the onslaught. And how do you direct them to be able to step back and not have that activation in their system? Because for me, when I'm working, from that coaching standpoint with them, there is a process by which I feel that, and this with working with me, that there is a somatic responsiveness that we have to get them in tune with. And actually what we're trying to do is to take that piece away for a long enough period of time that they can learn to regulate. And there's a really fine line here between bouncing that back and forth. And I'm wondering if you have an approach to that.
It's a great question. And yes, I do a lot of mindfulness stuff with my clients and really try to promote mindfulness. We do body scan meditations, breath work. So a lot of the clients who I work with have not ever done any of that type of work, and it feels a little unnatural at first, but by and large, they all report that it helps tremendously. So that's one big part. The other thing is, by giving me their credentials to log in and they're not logging in, they don't get that activation of just even seeing the email from their co-parent. And it's actually quite amazing how different it lands with them when it's an email from me. And they know, we don't email about anything other than this.
Right.
So
We're
they
not having
know,
tomorrow.
they know that it's coming.
Mhm.
But when and where I'm able to just summarize the information to them, it has a totally different effect rather than just sending them a copy and paste. Sometimes there are very specific details that have to be copied and pasted, but whenever possible, I summarize it to them, and it's just a totally different response, or just a different effect on their nervous system. The other thing is, 2 points that I wanted to make is the 24-hour cooling off period to let their nervous system settle down, turn off the limbic brain, bring things back to the frontal cortex. So if it's a situation where they're getting the emails, I tell them, if you need to, go ahead and type up that response that you want to. Don't send it. Wait for 24 hours. If you still feel like sending it after that period of time, I still recommend that you don't, but they never do, right? It's enough time to calm down your nervous system, but that's kind of a little too late. So it's better to fix it on the front end,
Right.
And address it in the beginning. But the one other point that I wanted to make is that sometimes with new clients, I notice that they have a hard time giving up, letting me take it over.
Right.
And so then it's information to me that, okay, what are they getting from this? How are they connected or enmeshed in this enough to keep going back? What's the payoff for them? And so then digging in deeper to the relationship stuff, the history, to find out what is it that is preventing them from giving up that control. So that's kind of like, there's two sort of different clients that I work with. One who happily sends it over to me, and the other one that still needs to do a little bit more work to figure out why they're not letting go.
Yeah. And that not letting go, that control piece, that fear driven of, I'm handing this over to somebody and I don't have control of what happens here, is scary. And the other component of that is what is in it for them is the activation. I mean, there is an addictive quality to conflict. And, as you engage in the drama that comes along with that, it feeds the system and it becomes self-perpetuating. So again, getting them to uncouple from that. What I want to say in this moment to the listeners in this is, if you are going to utilize somebody like Michelle to do your ghostwriting, no matter how uncomfortable it is, let go of it early. Trust the process, because the things go hand in hand. As you let that go, your nervous system downregulates. As they take control of that and you don't see that, your system downregulates. And as you're down regulating your system, that addictive positive feedback loop starts to unravel and you can start to relax. There's a couple of things here that I want to bring forward, because I think about this a lot when I'm directing my clients to find somebody to help them with this. And frankly, Michelle, I was so happy to hear that this is something that you're offering, because this is not something that is generally offered out there. There aren't a lot of people doing. As a matter of fact, I don't know anybody else that's doing.
I don't either.
Yeah. And this is a place that is of such great benefit, because people can step back and give that up to somebody who really, one, has been there and done this, understands it, and has some legal background in terms of formatting this stuff. But the thing that I want everybody to understand is, oh, you didn't write that. oh, you've got somebody else doing this in the background, is not a bad thing, but it can be perceived as, what's wrong with you? Why can't you just do this yourself? So how you approach this, I think, is a really important endeavor. To turn the credentials over, I think, is an important piece, because it really allows you to step back and to have the communication with the person that's doing your ghostwriting from a component that simply says, I've distilled this. I've taken out all of the things that are inconsequential to the conversation, i.e., anything that doesn't have to do with the kids. I've taken out any disparaging language that they've had to say to you. I've erased all of the things that are just blah, blah,
Snarky.
blah. And here's what needs to be communicated. And then you, as the parent that needs to respond, are actually making the response. It is your response.
Exactly.
And it's going through your ghostwriter onto the format and to them. So you can actually put in the response that, no, this is my response. And to feel comfortable with that is really important. And I think it's important to the process of you letting go to that person that's doing it.
Absolutely, Brooke. And it's really no different than when you hire an attorney. They prepare your declaration, and they're not making up the facts. They're taking the facts from the client and distilling it and making it present in a reasonable fashion. So I'm not making up the facts. I'm getting all of the facts from the client.
Yeah. What I like what you do in this is, because you have the legal background and you have the personal experience in this, you've learned how to format the conversation. So whoever is looking at this, the judge, the parenting coordinator, whoever is taking this information in, can see the level of accuracy, the level of non-confrontational languaging that's there, and they can actually pull in the information that's needed. Whereas if you are in the middle of this, that's a very difficult thing to do, as you know, because this cost you dearly at the beginning of your process.
Absolutely. And, I think I told you the first time I met you that I wanted to do this kind of work. But there's no way I could have done it when I met you. I was still very much in it. And then there was what's the other thing I wanted to mention? Oh, the other thing I wanted to mention, in addition to, being a certified coach and an attorney and going through this personally, I've also gone through your coach training.
Yeah. Oh, you've done your work over the years, Michelle, and that's really one of the major reasons that I wanted to bring you in here, because you have created something here that I haven't seen, and people are going to listen to this. Professionals are going to listen to this and they're going to go, wow, I could do that too. And this is, I think, from everything that I can gather, this is your creation that's come out of our conversations, out of your experience, out of looking at going, well, my girlfriend is my girlfriend, and that's great that she can do that, but that's going to affect our relationship, and that's not the relationship I want to have with my girlfriend. And oh, she's not as qualified.
I work with a lot of stepmoms, and they often take over the role of ghostwriting, and it affects their relationship. They don't want to be doing it. They're getting triggered. So yeah, that's exactly right.
And this comes back to the conversations that I've had in these podcasts in the past. If you've got a spouse or a step parent that is in this, or that you're in relationship with, that's not their role, and it will deteriorate your relationship with them. It's not a place to have this going on. And as parents give that role to their new partners or spouses, there is such a level of codependence in that will ring through the rest of their relationship, in the power differentials and exposing things that need to be worked through with professionals, whether that professional is a coach, whether that professional is a therapist, whatever the components are. So, having stepmoms or that new partner do the ghostwriting is so dangerous, because the tension bleeds through, and somebody can look at that and go, that's not coming from that parent, that's coming from their partner. And that puts a level of crazy making more into the conflict than is needed. For one, I think it does more damage than it does help, because now that person who's receiving that feels the energy and the tension of the new partner that they're already got a problem with just by the mere existence. And now everything starts to mushroom from there. So again, this piece that you're offering is, and what I like about it too, is you've got that perspective that you can bring to it as well and neutralize it.
Another piece is the fear that my clients often come to the table with, fear of just not knowing what to respond to from the court's perspective, really having a level of fear that they're going to get in trouble with the court if they don't respond to every single thing or every, allegation that's not true. And so it really settles them in that regard as well, knowing that, okay, she's got this, she knows what she's doing. If she didn't respond to that, then it's because it doesn't need to be responded to.
Right. And that is something that can be really hard for somebody to let go of. But once they get that pattern of, okay, this is something that I've been teaching for decades now around, you don't have to respond. There's so little that needs responsiveness. And when it does, using Bill Eddy's BIFF formatting and just delivering this in such a neutral fashion, it doesn't give the other parent traction. They've got nothing to grab a hold of except to make more noise to try to get something generated. And what's being delivered makes sense.
It does. And they'll eventually get bored. The co-parent will eventually get bored if you're not giving them their food, and they'll direct their conflict somewhere else where they're getting that reaction.
So for the listeners in this, you guys have heard this. You've heard this over and over and over again. And Michelle is just reiterating this piece because she's living it. She's got it. She understands it. Anything else you want to bring forward, Michelle?
Not off the top of my head. Let's see, there was something I thought of. I lost it.
Okay. So let's wind this down. But what I want to do is give people an opportunity to reach out to you, Michelle. This is Michelle Mitchell, and your website is?
Coach Michelle Michelle is Michelle.club, CLUB, or Instagram, it's Coach Michelle SD for San Diego.
So I encourage all of you guys to reach out to Michelle, to have her begin to engage with you with doing your ghostwriting stuff. She's excellent at what she does. She's developed this, and I trust her.
Thank you, bro.
So everybody, again, have a great week. We'll be back next week with another episode. This has been 169. Utilizing a ghostwriter for your communications. Take care, everybody.
Brooke, people don't have to wait until Friday mornings to get more content. If this is something that's helpful for them, right? This isn't the first time you've broadcast anything or recorded anything or put anything out there in the world. What are the other ways people can get the help more aggressively or speed up their recovery process? What materials are available for people right now?
Well, I've written a book called The Black Hole of High Conflict, and it's available on Amazon and Kindle.
Great.
And everything that we're talking about is really compressed and put into there. So this is a really good starter place to get in and get your mind working and to see what these concepts are about and how to start to apply them. The other place that I think that is valuable is to go to our website and look at some of the blog articles that I've written. Those are available there as well. They go into some of these other arenas, and that's at www.highconflict.net. So the book, the website are also really good places to get the material. And also we have classes. We have high conflict diversion program classes that you can get into and get some one-on-one help with this as well.
And you know me, I'm aggressive. Whatever I want to become good at or learn, I find someone who's good at it and pay them and hire them and shorten my learning curve. What if somebody just wants your help? Somebody says, Brooke has this information. He's good at something I'm not good at yet, and I want to work with him. Do you have any type of coaching or consultations or anything like that?
Absolutely, I do. I do one-on-one coaching for custody cases. I help people get ready for family court services. If you've got that in your community, I work with attorneys and clients to help them with managing and strategically setting them up to have more successful cases as well.
And how do they reach out? You want them to just go to the website or email or phone, or what's the best way for them to reach out, raise their hand and say, I need some help?
They can email me. My direct email is brooke@highconflict.net. That's BROOK at highconflict, conflict.net.
Perfect. That's everything everybody would need to get some help, right?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Brooke.